Hi, well, I'm Dr Carol Atack. I'm the Director of Studies in Classics here at Newnham, and my research area is ancient Greek history. My particular interest is the political thought and philosophy of ancient Greece. And my current research project is on the political thinking of Plato and how his ideas about time are part of both his construction of his dialogues, which we read, and also how they play into the arguments. So when philosophers now read the dialogues as part of looking back at historical philosophy, they're always very keen to extricate the arguments from the dialogues and separate them out from that literary setting. But actually, my research is looking at how the dramatic setting of Plato's dialogues, the way in which Socrates and other characters interact with each other, and the historical events that are happening at the point at which Plato sets the dialogues, that has an impact on the argument. And actually, one of the things that we find is that some of the dialogues take place in impossible time settings where characters encounter each other who couldn't possibly have met at that time or sometimes any other time. It's very interesting that Plato animates people who were no longer alive at the point at which he wants them to be in conversation with Socrates. It's a way in which he can get ideas from different times together. And that's a particularly potent idea in some of the dialogues where Plato is drawing on his own experiences growing up in an Athens that had been devastated first by plague and then by war. And actually we can see a lot of similarities between Plato's writing and between more modern writing that comes out of times of conflict. So here at Newnham, we have a legacy of great classicists like Jane Harrison, who was the classics lecturer here at the start of the 20th century through the period of the Great War and the flu pandemic. At the time when I started working on Plato and thinking about how his experience of the trauma of disease and war had affected his thinking, we hadn't yet had the coronavirus pandemic that has been affecting our college life for the past couple of years. So it's been very interesting to think through our present experience now, how we feel differently about planning for the future, thinking about how we want to live in moments of trial and trauma, whereas for Plato, death and disease, the early death of young characters. So the dialogue, the Protagoras, in which some of the characters speaking died young of the plague that affected the city. The dialogue is about how people should participate in democracy, how they should be educated to do that, but the characters listening to those discussions never were able to benefit from that. They'd been carried away by disease and then by war. So it's a different way of thinking about the future from the ancient world, where life is less certain. Planning for pleasure in the future may be of a greater risk than planning for it today. So by looking at the setting of these dialogues, the way in which the lived experience of Athens comes into these philosophical conversations, I'm hoping both to extract a greater and richer understanding, but also link them to our present experiences.